Yeah, so I actually told my grandma about this panel, that I'm going to be moderating a panel on AI. And she just interrupted me and started going, oh, AI is terrible. You're all going to lose your jobs. People are having relationships with AI. I'm so glad I'm not going to be around to see it. And then I interrupted her and I said, no, it's going to be on AI in medicine. And she stopped and she said, oh, AI is going to do great things in medicine. So I'm really excited to be here because I feel like that's the one thing we can agree on, that AI is doing really exciting things in the sector of health and medicine. And I'm going to start with you, Konstantin. So you also work on supporting research and development in drugs. How close are we to having a drug on the market that is based on AI research, or like that wouldn't be possible without AI?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, ultimately, it's not as black and white as that question might suggest, because research is a collaborative effort. It involves a lot of people across the entire value chain to bring a drug to market. And while we think that AI can accelerate a lot of the steps along the way, and they can support researchers in that process, and we might be able to do good in silico designs, there's still a lot of lift that needs to be done to actually get it over the line. So I don't think there's going to be the single headline of this is the first AI designed drug, because the reality is that there's so many people involved in the process. And small tweaks in these programs can make huge differences. And so to answer, maybe this dodges the question a little bit, but I do think that we're already seeing now that AI is accelerating the development, especially on all of the in silico work that we're doing. So all of the computational modeling that we're doing to kind of come up with good candidates, refine them, think about things like pharmacokinetic modeling in terms of modeling how drugs might behave in with or interact with our immune system. And then it helps accelerating certain aspects of clinical trial design and the process and regulatory submissions. So that's already happening, but I don't think it's going to be that clear cut where we'll have the headline of this is the first AI designed cancer drug. It's going to be a gradual process.
I think journalists are waiting for that, to write that headline. I think a lot of people are. Yes, I mean, Demis Hassabis, who's the CEO of DeepMind, he said AI would help cure all disease by 2030. And I'm wondering, is there any one of you three who would support that statement?
2030 is too early.
Yeah, why?
I don't think by 2030 you have cured all disease. You may have understood more disease. You may have been able to diagnose disease earlier, which may lead, especially in cancer, it will lead to more cure, because the earlier you detect cancer, the better. That's also a field we work on quite actively, because this is really one of the key elements. If you detect cancer early, you have a chance. If you detect it late stage, for example, lung cancer, that's dramatic, right? And you cannot cure it anymore. But I think in 2030 it's just too close.
So you're all glad he's not your boss. You don't
Yes.
have to. But Anna, what are you most excited on in that process that you're working on?
Yeah, I'm excited. Maybe I can make one statement on the drug development, because I used to
Yeah.
work at pharma for many years, and we have been using AI for a long, long time, right? We have been predicting properties of molecules. We have done the pharmacogenetic kinetic modeling. We have done all sorts of interesting and cool stuff, and it does work in these niche areas. What is, I think, where now the hype comes from is this generative AI. And now the assumption is, can maybe the AI generate the drug? And that's where I think you're right. It's not just about generating the molecule or the sequence of the molecule, but then there's so many other steps. So it's really a combination of different AI plus experiments. And I think this is what Fabian mentioned in his entry speech today. This iterative process of predicting what experiment do I have to do next. Let the AI learn from that, run the experiment, and then create this lab in the loop. This is where most of the progress will come from in the very near future. But I'm agreeing with you. It will not be the AI doing it all by 2030, unfortunately.
Tobias, you work a lot on diagnostics, on image-based diagnostics. Is AI better at reading MRIs, for example, than a human doctor? And do we want it to be?
So for certain questions, yes, I would say it is already better than the average doctor, right? But of course, you have experts, you have specialist doctors, right, who are better than the best AI systems today, right? The main issue is if you're a patient and you go to your next hospital, even maybe your next center of excellence, uh, you will most likely not talk to the best expert in the field, right? Um, and this is why the solutions that we see today in the market already have a value, right? Because they help the average physician. They help the young physicians who just start in their field to make fewer errors, and sometimes they even help the experts, right? There's definitely, I would say, the level of accuracy of performance that we see with AI solutions also in radiology has been going up steadily.
There is a lot of talk about de-skilling, that maybe doctors who get MRI images and a recommendation from AI, and it says, yeah, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine. There's a lot of automation bias, of course. You just automatically believe the AI is right. And maybe doctors will not be able to become experts anymore. Is that something you worry about?
So I think we need to differentiate a little bit what tasks are we talking about, right? So if we look today, the AI solutions that we see in radiology, many are about like automating small tasks, quantifying certain things, right? And these are the tasks that a radiologist can do. And until recently they had to do it because there was no other way, right? If we think about, let's say, assessment of tumor growth, right? That you need to measure it manually. And it's like relatively straightforward if you just measure distance, but if you want to measure the volume, which is more accurate, then it gets very cumbersome. Yeah, or the same if you are planning for radiation therapy, you need to outline, to contour all the risk organs and the targets. This is a lot of work. This is like hours of time that you spend just circling structures in front of the computer. This is not what radiologists want to do, right? And I think if they don't need to do that anymore, yes, maybe they lose some capability there, but that is not an issue, right? The tasks of the radiologists will change, and I think they will change quite significantly in the future, that we get away from these like small manual tasks more to kind of management, more to the larger decisions, or a radiologist as management of a number of AI agents that are doing like the groundwork for them. But I don't really see that as a general issue. We've seen that in other fields, that automation has taken over certain tasks that have been done manually in the past. Usually this leads to a higher quality overall.
How do you make sure, because with the pace of new models being rolled out, of new updates being rolled out, how do you make sure to evaluate the models correctly? And maybe, Anna, you also work in diagnostics, right? Maybe you can answer that.
Yeah, so for example, the models that we bring on the market, they are all medical products, so they are highly regulated. So we have to go through basically all the same steps that you have to go through with a normal test that you run in a lab on your blood sample. So it's a very highly regulated space, and that means we do the exact same types of validation. You have to show that for the intended use population, so this set of potential patients that it's supposed to work in, you have a specific performance, right? And that you have to prove in different data sets. You have to also even run clinical studies to prove that. So I would say it's very similar. The only difference is that now we are validating an AI model.
But Konstantin, like the models you work with work differently, right? Can you explain how the validation process works when you work with foundational models?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of validation throughout our development, and we publish a lot of the results of that on our research blog in the model cards for GPT 5.5, for example, there's a huge section on how the models are evaluated, both internally but also with external partners, where we we work with pharma companies, we work with biotechs that they independently evaluate our models on their benchmarks. This is slightly different from what you discussed. We're not providing a medical product, right? But we're providing a research tool. And so, we care about factuality. We care about, having our models performing harder and harder tasks, but the way you evaluate them is quite different. But first of all, we do a lot of research on our own benchmarks and evaluations. Just last week, we published a new benchmark on hard genomic reasoning tasks. So tasks that I think you would typically need to write code for, or humans are not very good at kind of sifting through the large amounts of genomic data manually, right? So these are the kind of tasks where we want to make progress on. And we're publishing benchmarks to also enable other people to train their own models and evaluate them on the same tasks. So, I mean, the short answer is we do a lot of benchmarking on a lot of hard medical tasks. The generality of our models, that they can do so many, we want to build general intelligence. They can, as a result, do many tasks. And so we try to evaluate on tasks that we don't train it on, right? To see if it is actually getting generally better. And, the ultimate bar that we want to meet is really 3 metrics, right? It's better, faster, cheaper, drugs and diagnostics. And so for like the faster, I think we're already seeing a lot of progress on that in terms of just raising the productivity floor of what everyone is doing that's working in the field. And on the kind of lifting the ceiling, that's where we want to design really, really hard tasks that, human scientists have traditionally struggled with, and get our models to do a good job at those.
It's funny when you say it's not a medical product, because it isn't, but people are using it as a medical product, right? I think the way most of us have we're a specific audience, but I feel most people, the way they've gotten in touch with AI in healthcare is that they ask ChatGPT about their symptoms. So is it patients that have to evaluate the answers that ChatGPT is giving them, or?
No, so we have, to your point, it's totally true, and we see that. So about 300 million users are using our products every week for health-related questions. And that leads to a huge responsibility that we have to give answers that are grounded in facts. But we also have to think of the alternative, which is you end up on a random forum where people kind of share their thoughts on what you might have. You kind of Google what you might have based on a few select symptoms. So I do think that, the quality of answers that we can make available to everyone is going to be much, much higher. And we've got a whole research team dedicated to factuality of the responses in our health-related questions, making sure that, it's very, very fail-safe. So trying to absolutely minimize false negatives, right? And rather erring on the side of caution than giving false advice, and always referring to go and see a medical professional as a kind of fallback if there's any degree of uncertainty. I would also say that it really provides more access to medical knowledge in regions where we might not have the same density of medical professionals that we have in Europe. So if you think about, the African continent, we see a lot of views in low resource settings where people have access to the internet, but they don't have access to healthcare. And they can also ask health questions in any language, right? And we make that available for free with our instant models.
So they should get doctors, but they get ChatGPT.
It's better than the alternative, right? So, and ultimately, it can help to improve medical education in those regions. And we think, our mission is ultimately to make all of the intelligence that we develop available for everyone, right? So our kind of company statement is AGI for the benefit of everyone. And we really, live by that principle by making as much intelligence available for free in all of those areas. And we think that it's better than the alternative where it's not available.
And I think it gets only then dangerous when you start self-medicating or doing something without maybe having it checked, right? But as long as you just I think when it's done for education, it's a good thing. That's maybe something where we should also start educating our children more. How do we use these tools? What do we then do with the results we get from these tools, or suggestions, or whatever it is, the knowledge that you see there, right? I think that's more the question we should ask ourselves.
Anna, you said something very interesting when we spoke earlier, which was that you're an Bioinformatikerin.
Yes.
A computational biologist, maybe. One of the jobs that might be obsoleted. I don't even know if that's a verb, by AI. But you said maybe it's not even cheaper to use AI instead of humans. And maybe you can explain that.
Yeah, I think it's a big experiment currently going on, right? I mean, there is, of course, everybody trying to accelerate what they do, maybe answer even questions that we were not able to answer yet, being faster, better, more efficient. What did you say? The three, everybody in all industries, including pharma and diagnostics, is trying that. The question is a little bit, will it be possible, and will it even be cheaper for all the tasks? Is it maybe in some cases cheaper to have the experiments run instead of running big computationally expensive prompts, and it will not yield you. So it's an experiment currently going on, and I think we have to be careful in finding it out. I mean, we need to test it basically, and that I think is true for all industries, but also for us, definitely.
I'm wondering, and this is like a question for all of you. So I have a lot of doctors in my friend group, and they often talk about what's very annoying to them is writing all these reports. They spend a lot of time with paperwork, and of course, and then most of the studies that are released on AI in healthcare are not geared towards that, but they're geared towards, I don't know, diagnosing cases like Dr. House. Are AI companies actually working on what doctors need?
Yes. So actually, part of our strategy is exactly in that thing. So we know that the healthcare costs are rising because demographic, people getting older, more, and then you have, of course, more of these chronic diseases. You have more dementia, you have more cancer, you have more, and at the same time, shortage of staff. So we have not enough people to take care of ill people. So the best way is to go into prevention, to predict disease earlier. That's what you can do with AI. But the other thing is, how can you actually make sure these doctors, nurses, all this staff doesn't have to do all these repetitive manual tasks, this, let's say, stupid tasks that you can automate. So we work heavily on reducing that burden by asking the AI to summarize patient notes, to prepare tumor boards, for example, to create all that so that they can focus on finally deciding which treatment to give, for example, which is what they're supposed to do. So I think it's where we have the biggest lift even, and it may be boring because it's just automating tasks, but I think it's the most important. And you're right, maybe there's too much focus on the other end, but we are committed to doing that efficiency increase also for the medical staff.
And
Yeah, that is, I think that is definitely central, right? So far, we have been discussing a lot about the quality, right? If AI replaces a certain task, whatever, what will that mean to quality? But the reality is that due to these staff shortage that we already see today, and the growing age of the population, more chronic disease, more exams, etc., without automation, we will not be able to maintain the high level of healthcare that we have today. I mean, not even here in the Western countries. If you look at developing countries, there it's a completely different picture, right? So I believe, and for now in Germany, right, we are still, I would say our healthcare system is still working pretty well. So for us, I often have the impression like all the AI tools is more like, it's interesting, but it's not really necessary. We can do like this by ourselves. We can read all these images. If you just look over the channel, into the UK, people there are waiting partly for multiple months to get their diagnosis, for radiologic scan. If you are a cancer patient, that is like really critical, and can decide if you are if you can get a working therapy or not. There it's really a different situation already, and we are running into this direction here in continental Europe as well. We get more and more exams. On the other hand, we have less budget available. If you look at a healthcare budget is constantly cut. We need to have control there. The only answer for me is that we automate more. What is possible? We need to automate to increase efficiency. And it's not only automating tasks, it's also if you look at the processes, if you look into workflows in the hospitals, I think this is somebody that everybody who has been to a hospital, right, can tell a story about, or relatives. It's like basically you move seemingly erratically, right, from one person to the other. You've got enormous waiting times, and it's not what you would expect from a, let's say, smoothly working system, right? And there also, I believe there are enormous chances to optimize the workflows and the processes and give a better experience really to patients.
I would just also add to that, this is a huge opportunity for startups to build in exactly doing this process automation, in looking at the kind of process tasks that take a lot of time in the clinic, and we see a lot of startups do that. And what our role in that is currently is that we want to provide the API and the kind of atomic unit of automating that work, which are the models, and want to make it frictionless for startups to go and build some of those solutions. And I mean, my sister works in a trauma unit in Hamburg, and she was just telling me that they started this pilot with a startup that automates kind of voice transcription for patient notes. So between visits of patients, you can just kind of voice record, and you get back to your desk at the end of the day, and you don't have to spend 2 hours writing all of that up. And I think those are exactly the tasks that will deliver a lot of value in making our healthcare system more efficient.
That's not it's not a big headline, but it's probably the reality. Yes, I mean, I wanted to open it up, but we have like 50 seconds, so I don't think I can. But thank you so much for your time and your brilliant minds. Thank you so much for listening. And these three will be floating around, and I'm sorry, they'll be happy to answer your questions.
Ah, well.